There was a time a few years ago where everything on the news about it was so negative or harmful or violent or dangerous, and it's never been that kind of a place for me, so tales. I want to read a novel about Somalis that isn't trauma-born. Set it before the war and after my grandfather's birth. In this story, we're wearing 70s olive oil afros, decolleted bare on family photos, backdropped by hand-painted palm trees and ocean views. We're not pirates, but mermaids lazing by crystalline lagoons, shield hoisted to the waist, buoyant youth swimming to Chamad in coral crowds, the rainforests of our sea. On the beach there is no blood, only vendors reciting poetry, and there are no droughts on these dry pages. Turn a leaf and drift to the souk at Lahore, and see how we barter and flirt in the baking hours, wearing the richness of our language in idle talk like well-oiled summers. In the spine of this book, schoolgirls will fall in illicit love on abandoned Ferris wheels, then emerge mighty from girlhoods like the mountains of Sheikh. Our men will be the heroes for once, their webbed hands scaled in tenderness. The word colonialism is nowhere in this manuscript, and the epilogue speaks of a character, afloat with handed-down culture, waving off Ayaya returning to Berbera. The antagonists will be us, swimming in deep water, for we cannot exist without fault. And we do not need to look to other lands for treasures to adorn it. Abundant gales, coal, frankincense, hand-drawn depictions of nomads, and shining green-blue dirks billowing from its title. And this is just the last one. This one is called Searching for My Father's Tree. Again, my dad was born in rural Somalia, kind of in the outskirts, and quite literally under a tree. So, Searching for My Father's Tree. I expected to find a willow tree with an answer as to why Arthur never wears jeans. A sturdy bark able to withstand a field of fallen kin in the year of malaria. We translated it as rip at the back, Jehdi Dabada, and he allowed us to. With each leaf, I imagined a testimony to the years spent in post-colonial schools, never learning to hate his face. My father's tree, the only tree in this abad holding on to something. Its small cuts like sun-dried lips speaking his name. And when I found it, a spectacle at dawn, a wayfarer rooted, where Ayaya birthed him into the palms of our village. Thank you. It's a picture I found of my parents, and it kind of described before my telephone number, then my city. And even though we both know it isn't a thing to say, you tell me your grandfather swore men of honour can carry lineage back to the start. I say my father taught us we are all citizens of our country and people of the land, but I'm a woman of my own village. By the time we walk across Blackfriars Bridge, I want to advise you on closed-toe sandals, overseas universities. We fall into speaking Somali. I've never worn a country before, but you make me wear it like a green direct catching the light. Told you everything, so. Thinking about this really crazy summer that I had in Northern Year 9 where my dad was actually sort of racially attacked right outside of our house. He kind of just blocked out of the family. No one kind of really spoke about it, and I was just thinking about it. So I wrote that. Summer of Year 9. The night my father was battered for being a man in England, I sat watching Nightmare on Elm Street with my new cousins. He walked a guest home and hammered my mother's fears onto our front door. They'll never want us here, fly my body back. They could kill us and just return to work. My father, a man of suits and algebra, from Sheikh International Boarding School, of one real mother, tucked in a Burton shirt, who only became black in 1990 when war made home a jar of fire. Returned to us, face blood is a derogatory term that's used for darker skinned black people. So flick. I told my sister we should start a revolution and reclaim this word, blick, because I'm so blick. Like tarmac on a freshly laid road in a close-knit community. like the dabral of charcoal burning the frankincense smoking under a mother's garment. Blick, blicker than your coffee on a Monday morning. Blick with a Vaseline sheen. Blicker than any black sheep. No cling film wrap or bottle bleach. I'm the sky's landscape. My elbows ashen top boulders silhouetting the night. My cheeks the sun's promise stain. The first man to read the Adhan was Bilal, who was Blick. The noor of his face filtering through the moonlight, the timbre of a voice heard by all. And he and I and those of us who are Blick are as cold strong as a furnace in a northern factory, as dark as my father's village after rain. Have you ever been held by the night? Her strong Blick arms cloaking you from this alabaster world. Whenever I'm tired, she'll turn off the light, allow me to disappear into kinder shadows, embroider my mother's body onto the midnight sky. Growing up. Stories of waste to men. I know of boys who have killed. I know of boys who have killed and have been killed. Boys who would die for postcodes and houses they do not own. Who hold their 14-year-old brother's hands and mold it around knives and hammers and blades, their knuckles unkissed gang signs. I know of husbands who sleep lopsided, one eye on the fire escape, the other on a nursing wife. And wallahi, she's seen the back of him running more times than she's opened the front door to his salam. And they are tired of hiding their hegbed in 8 years old. I know boys who smile at me in the street, smile at me in respect, whose names paralyze the ear. Boys who I differentiate by dusk and dawn with their limited light. I know of young men who've survived desert walks along godless plains, Kenyan refugee camps inside crates, the grieving sea. Cold hands feverishly pulling at fabric. Those who died to arrive safe. And I know of fathers who burned their memories and frayed their tongues, men who have gained nothing, whose children are conscripted to the war they fled, turning the streets, the living rooms, their mothers' wombs into graveyards. And I know those women who wear emptiness like phones that ring out unanswered, mothers whose backs buckle under the weight of storms. And I know of the sisters who keep tally. Changed the entire decor, ripped up the carpet, put her bed by the window and his cupboard by the door. She threw away the bedside timber, dry without his warmth, and stole away the gobes, prescriptions, his brown leather jacket from prying eyes. She placed her vanity box by his old radio to hide the truth that the dim-lit hallway looks like him at night. The coffee table is still swarmed with his books. The Quran, Sunnah, dreams of my father. She envies the spines. Yesterday she wore his shoes to garden, his toes somehow finding the soil. And this next one I'm going to read, I'm going to pull a Tristan and it's not in the pamphlet. This one is called Somalian, I wrote it last week. It's a weird one, so I have to explain. So Somaliland officially, weirdly, doesn't exist. It's obviously a real place, but post-Civil War, it wasn't granted independence in like an official way. And I'm just thinking, well, that's shit, because it's real. And I This is called Somaliland. His ropey hair hung around his medium to ugly face. He had the hands of a man who held daughters like light bulbs, the kind to ensure his kids spoke both languages of this world, God and maths. There was a gap between his teeth. How I longed to live there, privy to a kinder place. His knees folded for tumbled regimes and the emancipation of a turbaned woman. I often saw a shepherd in his movements. His fists were diplomats, nursing his burnt-out patriotic heart as he negotiated what to save. I watched his body skin itself of loss and grow into a new life overseas. How I longed to put him on the map, this very real thing, this shoehorned boy, this black man of an island. Okay. So before I read tea with cardamom, I called it that because in a Somali culture, cardamom is quite, it's always what we have with our tea, and it's quite like, there's something that I very much associate with Somali. So the first one, cardamom. I'm trying to pinpoint when your mother's love stopped being the neighbourhood alarm clock. On school days, the cardamom songbird we no longer hear through the walls. Did it begin with you bunking school for your brotherhood of wayward sons? How did they teach you to unthread the ropes of her heart? Your Nikes left imprints the Civil War never did. I tried to remember the exact moment your school teachers felt vindicated. Your extraterrestrial eyes, bruised and hard, the only required information. How did you become a statistic and not the space between 0 and 1 where love lies? I think of the moment your mother became homeless in her Dubai imported living room, threading the years into abayas and daughters, serving tea without cardamom. Was there a day you tried to teach her war was safe? The charred feet, burning neighborhoods, familiar limbs, counting heads, the running and the loss, the losing and the praying next to your empty bed. Why didn't you learn that mothers turn into refugees when we leave? The next one's called